Good morning, guys. Hope you're all doing okay this morning. Wow, we're at Thursday already. It's weird. The weeks seem long, but they're also flying by at the same time. I don't know about you guys. How nice is it today to wake up to some sunshine? Really, really has made me feel a lot happier today. I think my internal weather is sunshine and happy. And I'm going to make the most of it today because apparently I saw the weather earlier and we're in for rain tomorrow and most of the weekend. So if you're planning on getting out and getting some fresh air today, I'd go and do it because I think this is the best we're going to get for a few days. Anyway, I hope you're all doing okay. Week 2, lockdown. We've got this. So this morning we're going to carry on reading. So just to remind you all, I'm reading Calm the F Down by Sarah Knight. Sorry, I keep having to say F, and I'm really trying because there are some swear words in this book, and I'm really trying hard not to say them. So sometimes if you hear me pausing, it's because I'm trying to think of an alternative word to put in, because obviously I don't want to be effing and blinding all morning, and it's not really what you want to wake up to at 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning, is it? So bear with me if it sounds like I'm stumbling. I may be thinking for an alternative word to slip in there. Okay, so we're going to crack on with this. So get yourselves nice and comfy. And just remember before we start, if you're struggling in lockdown, a really, really good thing to do if you've maybe been furloughed or you're isolating and you haven't got your normal routine is to try and create some sort of routine at home. Because that really does make the days easier. And although it might not be your usual work pattern, or to try and keep some routine to your days is a really, really good way to help keep you going and get that structure to your day. So whether it be every 10 o'clock in the morning, you come and sit down and listen to me reading, it's really important to try and keep to your usual bedtime routines, the usual time you'll go to sleep and the usual time you'll get up. As annoying as that sounds, as I think the only positive I can take from lockdown at the moment is that every Saturday and Sunday I can have a lay-in because my son hasn't got rugby or football. But actually, it's all right having those, short lay-ins, but make sure you are getting to bed at a decent time and getting up at a decent time just to keep you in that routine, because it's so easily lost. And I think sometimes that's where the lines can blur from the day to night. And this is only 4 weeks, hopefully. So we've done a week. So we will be getting back to some sort of normal routine, hopefully really soon. And it just makes that transition back to normality a lot easier if you keep a bit of structure to your days whilst we're going through this lockdown. So anyway, if you are getting ready to listen, so get yourselves nice and comfy. So remember, this book is a bit of a self-help book with a bit of humour in it as well. And it's all about, things that we can control in life and things that we can't, anxieties and all things like that, which so many of us now have and deal with on a daily basis. So it's nothing to be ashamed of or to be scared of, sharing with people. I often share on here and with my friends, I suffer terribly with anxiety, and at the moment it's through the roof. And I think for me, that's a lot to do with everything's out of my control. All this lockdown, I can't plan anything. I can't control any of it. And I've got to just go with the flow. And that can be very scary if you're someone who's used to planning a lot and, having quite a structure to your life. So let's go. I'm going to stop waffling. I'm going to start reading. So we're on to part 2. Calm down. Identify what you can control. Accept what you can't and let that stuff go. If part 1 was all about parameters, part 2 is all about practical application. The how-tos for converting the what-ifs into the now-whats, so to speak. To ease you in, I'm going to focus mainly on stuff that hasn't happened yet. The still theoretical what-ifs, the kind of stuff that worries you whether or not is even likely to occur. I'll help you determine if those worries are justified, and if so, how to prepare for and mitigate the damage, should the problems they stem from come to fruition. And in some cases, how to prevent those problems from happening at all. We'll start by classifying your what ifs by category, much like the National Weather Service classifies hurricanes. Except in your case, we're not dealing with hurricanes, we're dealing with shitstorms. Oh, come on, you saw that pun coming along a mile away. Next, we'll assign a status, prioritising not only what needs dealing with, but how soon. A calculation based on my favourite factor, urgency. At the end of part 2, we'll use all of these tools to mentally declutter your worryscape, one hypothetical storm at a time. And by practicing it on stuff that hasn't happened yet, it will be even easier to employ the no worries method on stuff that has already happened. Soon, you'll be turning the what ifs into now what's like a pro. You won't even need me anymore. Pick a category, any category. As you probably know, hurricanes are categorized on a scale of 1 to 5. This is called the Saffir-Simpson Hurricane Wind Scale. Those numbers are then used by meteorologists to forecast and convey to you the level of damage the storm is likely to inflict along its path. 1 being least severe, 5 being most. Of course, weather people are not always correct. There are many unpredictable variables that determine the scope of the actual post-storm damage, such as the relative stability of the roofs, power lines, trees, awnings, boat docks, and lawn furniture in the affected area. This is why weather people have the best job security in all the land. It barely matters if they get it right all the time, because they can't get it right all the time, and they seem totally okay with that. I would be a very bad weather person. But anyway, the 1 to 5 categories themselves are indisputable. They reflect the hurricane's strength in terms of its maximum sustained wind speed, which is a totally objective measurement. The anemometer don't lie. Storms are different in the sense that there is no ometer that can measure the precise strength of any single event. Its strength, or what we'll term severity, is informed solely by how the individual person affected experiences it. For example, say you've dreamt of playing Blanche Devereaux in Thank You for Being a Friend, the Golden Girls musical, for your entire life. But after a successful 3-week one, you were unceremoniously kicked to the curb in favour of the director's new cougar girlfriend. You're devastated. On the other hand, your friend, Guillermo, is positively jubilant to have been let go from the funeral home where he was in charge of applying rouge and eye makeup to the clientele. Same objective stuff storm, different subjective experience. Though maybe you could hook G up with the director's girlfriend, it would be a shame to let his talent for reanimating corpses go to waste. Further, you cannot compare your experience of any given storm to anyone else's experience of a storm. Is your broken heart more or less major than my broken tooth? Who can say? Therefore, our storm categories are based not on how severe they might be, but simply how likely they are to actually hit you. 1 to 5 on a scale at least to most probable. For example, if you're a popular person, then what if nobody comes to my party? Would be a category 1, highly unlikely. Whereas, what if 2 of my friends are having parties on the same week and I have to choose between them? Is a category 5 inevitable? Or vice versa if you're a hermit. From here on out, probability is your barometer. We'll call it, I don't know, your probometer. I'll just show you a little picture of this. And instead of having one weather person for the entire tri-state area charged with forecasting the accurate potential damage of a category 3 storm passing over a 13,000 square mile radius, who may or may not get it right when it comes to your house, we'll have one weather person focused solely on your house. Oh, and your house is your life, and you are that weather person. Actually, you're the weather person because you and only you, get to predict whether this storm is likely to land on you. The 5 categories on the Sarah Knight storm scale are as followed. Category 1, highly unlikely. Category 2, possible but not unlikely. Category 3, likely. Category 4, highly likely. Category 5, inevitable. Again, note that this scale indicates nothing of the strength or severity of the storm, merely the probability of its occurrence. When it comes to boarding up your metaphorical windows and battening down your metaphorical hatches, your probometer rating will help you budget your freak-out funds effectively. Fewer freak-out funds on less likely stuff, more on more likely stuff. And sometimes you won't need to spend any freak-out funds at all on preparation. You can save them exclusively for cleanup. More on that later. To familiarise you with the category system, let's look at some potential storms in action. For example, do you ski? I don't, so it's highly unlikely that I will break my leg skiing. Category 1 all the way. Though if I did ski, it would be category 4, highly likely that I would break my leg. I know my limits. Now, consider Olympic gold medalist and 90s superhunk Alberto Tomba. Breaking his leg skiing might also be a highly unlikely category 1 because he's just that good. Or it might be a highly likely category 4 because he skis often, at high speeds, threading his obscenely muscled thighs between unforgiving metal structures. I leave it to Alberto in his capacity as his own personal weatherman to decide how likely he thinks it is that he'll break his leg skiing, and therefore how many, or few, freak-out funds he needs to budget for that outcome on any given day. Or let's look at earthquakes. Those are fun. People who live in Minnesota, which Wikipedia tells me is not a very tectonically active state, are category 1 highly unlikely to experience a major earthquake, whereas homeowners along North America's Cascadia subduction zone are flirting with category 5 every day. But that said, keep in mind that a category 5 storm doesn't have to be a catastrophic, earth-shaking event. It is not necessarily all that severe. It is simply inevitable. For example, if you're a parent, getting thrown up on is fully in the cards. If you're a female candidate for office, you'll be unfairly judged for your vocal timbre and wardrobe choices. And if you're a frequent flyer, one of these days your connection will be delayed and leave you stranded in the Shannon Island Airport for 6 hours with nothing but a complimentary ham sandwich and your laptop, on which you will watch The Hateful Eight and think, oh, it was just okay. Oh, and death is a category 5. It's going to happen to all of us, our cats, dogs, hamsters, and annual plants. Can I get a downgrade? Each what ifs, like a tropical cyclone brewing on the radar screen of your mind, a shit clone as it were, some will turn into full-fledged storms and some won't. But unlike tropical cyclones, you may have control over the direction your stuff clone takes, especially the category 1s, since they're highly unlikely as it is. For example, if I continue to never go skiing, I will never break my leg skiing. Crisis completely and totally averted. Yeah, I hear you, Graham, but that was a freebie. I can't give away my best stuff this early. Later in part 2, we'll discuss less ridiculously restrictive but equally effective ways to send a storm out to sea. Promise. Mulling the likelihood of a potential storm actually comes to pass is a useful exercise. Consulting your probometer helps you focus on the reality of your situation instead of obsessing over what-ifs that are often as unrealistic as the after photos in an ad for cut-rate diet pills. You know she just went for a spray tan, sucked in her stomach, and tricked out the tatters in a more flattering bra. Stop falling for that stuff, will you? And by the way, I apologise if all this talk of impending doom is triggering a freak out, but it's for the best. Because when you start thinking about storms based on probability, you'll begin to realise you didn't have nearly as much to worry about as you thought you did. So, when a what if pops up on your radar screen, you'll be able to say, total Cat 1, not worth worrying about. Or Category 2, no need to spend those freak-out funds quite yet. Logic can be very soothing. Speaking of logic from here on out, I'm going to see your emotional puppies and raise you some cold, hard, logical cats. Think about it. A puppy will flail around in the yard trying to scratch his back on a busted frisbee, whereas cats can reach their own backs, and generally speaking, they're not much for flailing. Dogs are players, giddily chasing a ball 1 minute, then getting distracted by a body of water that needs splashing in. Cats are hunters, approaching their target with laser focus and pouncing, it must be said, with cat-like reflexes. They are the official spirit animal of calm the F down. The gathering storms, a list. You may already know this about me, but I love a list. In this section, and in keeping with what I asked you to do back in part 1, I'm going to name some of my what ifs. The things that make me wake up in a panic or keep me from fully enjoying my afternoon spritz, so I can figure out which resultant worries deserve my attention and which ones I can discard, then start organising my response to the rest. Lists, man, lists, give me a life. For now, I'll stick with stuff that hasn't happened yet, because it's easier to practice on a theoretical. Fear not though, we'll deal with that stuff has already happened a bit later in the book. Okay, so 10 what ifs. 10 what ifs I may or may not need to worry about. My house key gets stuck in the door. A palm tree falls on my roof. More tarantulas appear in my house. I get into a car accident on the winding mountain road to the airport. It rains on my day off that I wanted to spend at the beach. My cats die. I order a different pizza than normal and it isn't very good. My editor hates this chapter. I show up for a speaking gig and totally bomb. I ruin my favourite pineapple print shorts by sitting in something nasty. Now, I'm going to ask you to make your own list of what ifs. Like mine, they should be drawn from stuff that hasn't happened yet. If you're generally an anxious person who has also been known to gaze into clear blue sky and imagine a plane falling out of it and onto your hammock, this should be an easy exercise. If you consider yourself merely situationally anxious, worrying about stuff only if and when it happens, I envy you. But I still want you to make a list, because it doesn't really matter whether every time you sit in the chair, you're worried the barber is going to cut it too short. One of these days, he may slip up and give you an unintentional asymmetrical fade, and you'll have to calm down and deal with it. The strategy for which is the same for all of us. Next, we're going to bust out our probometers and categorise each of these potential storms by probability. Looking at problems rationally and based on all available data, like your friendly neighbourhood Weatherspoon would look at them, helps you budget your freak-out funds effectively. I'll annotate my list and categorisation so you can follow my train of thought. 10 what ifs I may or may not need to worry about, ranked by probability. My house key gets stuck in the door. Category 2, possible but not likely. It may seem trivial, but I worry about this because it happened once before, and my husband had to climb a ladder and go in through a window, which made us realise how unsecured our windows were. So we've now installed locks on those. Therefore, if my key gets stuck in the door again, I'll be stuck outside with the mosquitoes waiting for a locksmith, which, per earlier, is a dangerous game in this town. Since we never figured out why it got stuck that one time, I have to assume it could happen again. However, the ratio is like 1,000 door unlock-ins to one stuck key. So probability remains low. A palm tree falls on my roof. Category 2, possible, but not likely. There are only 2 palm trees within striking distance of our house, and we have had 2 actual Category 5 hurricanes pass over our town in 2 weeks last summer. So far, so good. Then again, climate change. I'll give it a 2. More tarantulas appear in my house. Category 1, highly unlikely. I've been here several years and seen exactly 1 tarantula. On a day-to-day basis, this is a technical 1, even if it's an emotional 5. Puppies, in the crate you go. Logic cats, be on the lookout. I get into a car accident on the winding mountain road into the airport. Category 2, possible, but not likely. I had to think a little harder about this one. You often do when the worries are about real bad potential stuff. My first instinct was to call it a category 4, highly likely, simply because every single time I get into that taxi, I fear for my life. But I'm a nervous passenger. And if we've all been paying attention, we know that our level of anxiety about the problem doesn't predict the probability of the problem occurring. I can't bring myself to call it highly unlikely. I've seen a few accidents on the way to the airport. However, possible but not likely feels both accurate and manageably stressful. It rains on my day off that I wanted to spend at the beach. Category 4, highly likely. I'm not making this up for effect. It is currently raining and has been all morning, while the sun is shining brightly. I will never understand this form of tropical shower. Where is the rain coming from? My cats die. Category 5, inevitable. Cats are fascinating, crafty beasts, but they are not immortal. I suppose there's a small chance that Gladys and or Mr. Stussy will outlive me, but that's a category 1. I order a different pizza than usual and it isn't very good. Category 1, highly unlikely. I'm a creature of habit and I'm very good at predicting what toppings will work in harmony on a pizza. My editor hates this chapter. Category 1, highly unlikely. Like driving the winding mountain road, this is a situation where my innate anxiety initially compels me to forecast a more severe storm than is on the radar. When in truth, it is neither inevitable or even highly likely that my editor will hate this chapter. We must use all available data to make our predictions. And Mike, he's a lover, not a hater. I show up for a speaking gig and totally bomb. Category 2, possible, but not likely. Again, setting aside the anxious emotions and focusing on the raw data, I've done a fair amount of public speaking and I've never once bombed. But there's no point in jinxing it, so we'll call this a 2. I ruined my favourite pineapple print shorts by sitting in something nasty. Category 3, likely. In my new hometown, it's nearly impossible not to sit in something nasty at one point or another, be it dirt, sand, a squashed bug, animal poop, motor oil, or an old wet cigar. With indoor-outdoor living comes schmutz. With tourists comes litter. With drunken people and children comes spills. Island life. I used to think I could keep this brand of storm to a category 1 if I just didn't wear my favourite shorts wherever I went to go. Whenever I went to, everywhere I go is schmaltz waiting to happen. On the bright side, I have a washing machine and I know how to use it. Category 3 it is. Looking over my annotated list, you'll see that out of my 10 random things I have been known to worry about and that hasn't happened yet, 3 of them are category 1, highly unlikely. That's 33.3% of my stuff off the screens right there. Another 4 of them are category 2, possible but not likely. We are now more than halfway through my what ifs and they're dropping like flies in the champagne room. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling calmer already. So, are you hip to categorizing your own list? I'll give you extra space to jot down your thought process like I did, because sometimes you have to explain yourself to yourself before either of you can understand where you're coming from. Without being there to look over your shoulder or knowing you personally, I'm guessing that a solid chunk of your what ifs list is populated by category 1s and 2s, like mine was, which you can and should stop worrying about post haste. Later in part 2, I'll show you just how to do that. And even if you're a little heavier on the 3s, 4s, and 5s, you're about to pick up a whole lot of new strategies for weathering storms by discarding unproductive worries and organising a productive response. Mental decluttering. I'm telling you, it's the one. Once you have logically, rationally determined that a what if is a probable storm, a useful follow-up question is how soon is it going to land? There are 3 levels of urgency. Outlying. An outlying storm not only hasn't happened, you can't even be sure it will. Theoretically, these should be the easiest to stop worrying about because they are both unlikely and distant, low pressure and low priority. Ironic, since low pressure situations are what create legit rainstorms, but once again, metaphors and the anti-gurus who employ them are imperfect. Imminent. Imminent storms also haven't happened yet, but they're more solidly formed and you're likely to know if and when they'll hit. You still might be able to prevent an imminent storm, but if not, at least you can prep for the impact and mitigate the fallout. Total. A total storm is the one that is already upon you. You might have seen it come in when it was still imminent, or it may have appeared out of nowhere, like some 12-year-old YouTuber who has more followers than the Islam and Christianity combined. It matters not whether the effects of the storm will be considered mild or severe by you or anyone else. It's here and you have to deal with it. Whether the storm is highly unlikely category 1 or an inevitable 5, if it hasn't happened yet, you can worry about it less urgently than if it's just about to, or if it just did. The more the hairier. Okay, but what happens if you have multiple storms on the radar and you're reasonably confident you're going to need to spend time, energy, and/or money worrying about and dealing with them all? There's a reason the phrase is a mo money, mo problems, not mo problems, mo money. You don't get a magical influx of freak out funds just because you've had a magical influx of stuff land in your lap. Keep using the urgency as a tool for determining the prioritization of withdrawals. Here's a little quiz for you. You've messed up at work, but your boss doesn't know it yet because she's on vacation for 2 weeks. Your wife is 9.2 months pregnant. And the next one's a 2-parter. Your car is relatively new, make and reliable model. What if it breaks down? Surprise, it just broke down. So answers. Number 1. Category 4, highly likely. You're pretty sure your boss is going to tear you a new one when she gets back. However, it's going to be at least 2 weeks, which is no way imminent. So much other stuff could happen in 2 weeks, including your boss acquiring more urgent fires to put out than yelling or firing you. Maybe she'll be too blissed out from her Peruvian retreat to even notice what you did. Save your freak out funds for now, especially since you can't do anything about the fact you've already messed up. And you might need that time or energy later to beg for forgiveness or update your resume. Number 2, category 5, inevitable. That baby is coming soon and you know it. You have no control over when or how, but you can do a little prep to make life easier in the eventual moment. A prudent withdrawal of freak-out funds is in order. Prepare for landfall by spending some time, energy, and money putting together a go bag stocking the freezer with ready-made meals, and sleeping. Because once that kid arrives, it's all over between you and Mr. Sandman. 3A, Category 1, highly unlikely. 3B, Category 1, highly unlikely. Based on the information contained in the first part of the question, this should have been an easy Category 1, but as we know, stuff happens. Even sometimes the highly unlikely stuff. And when its status leaps from outlying to total, you have to deal with a higher priority fashion than either of the other two storms on the radar. Prioritizing based on urgency. Boom. You're going to need a car to drive yourself to work for the last 2 weeks, that you definitely still have a job, and to drive Margaret to the hospital sometime, well, imminently. Withdraw freak-out funds immediately. Call a mechanic and see about getting your Volvo towed over to the garage, then call Hertz to see about a rental to tide you over. Oh, wait, what was that? Margaret's waters just broke. Oh, no, another storm. In this particular case, it doesn't take a genius to determine that the one raining down amniotic fluid upon you and your sofa is the one you need to worry about first. Margaret's comfort takes priority, and you can deal with your car sitch whenever there's a break in the action. Time to reprioritise. Instead of a mechanic, you're calling an Uber and a cleaning service. Choose it or lose it. When more than one storm is vying for top priority, pick one to focus on for now. You can always switch back and forth, but if you try to do simultaneously double duty, you'll blow through your freak-out funds faster than Johnny Depp through a pile of Colombian marching powder and lose your goddamn minds while you're at it. I can see it now. You'll be trying to change Margaret's fan belt and begging the mechanic for an epidural, and it's in an absurd Cockney pirate accent. If you want to stay sane, pick a lane. To recap, when it comes to outlying, imminent or total storms, how do you prepare? Make like a weather person and forecast outcomes based on all available data. Ask yourself not only how likely is this to happen to me, but also how soon. And before you spend your freak-out funds, ask yourself the one question to rule them all. Can I control it? Get your control freak on. In this section, I'll take you through a practical round of can I control it? But first, I want to examine the different kinds of control you may or may not be able to exert on any given situation. It's a sliding scale, and you'd be well served to understand the nuances. Out of your hands. These are the things you can't control at all, such as the weather, other people's actions, the number of hours in a day, and the number of chances your boyfriend is going to give you before he gets sick of your what if he's cheating on me rubbish and dumps you anyway because you're needy and untrusting. Make a contribution. You can't control the larger underlying problem, but you can do your part to minimize its effects. For example, in terms of the weather, you can't control the rain, but you can control whether or not you suffer its effects to the fullest if you bring an umbrella. You can't control the number of hours in a day, but you can control whether you spend too many of them watching online contouring tutorials instead of hand washing your delicates like you should be. And you can't control Randy's ultimate level of tolerance for your "who is she" comments on his Facebook page. But you can control whether you keep using your fingers to tap out those 3 little words. Or you could just break up with Randy because, let's face it, where there's smoke, there's fire. Under your influence, this stuff you can heavily influence, if not completely control, such as not oversleeping by way of setting an alarm. Excuse me. Is it possible that something will prevent your alarm from going off, like a power outage or a mouse gnawing through the wire, or you from heeding its siren song, like accidentally pressing off instead of snooze? Sure, but that's a category 1, highly unlikely storm, and you know it. Or am I to infer from this line of questioning that you don't really want to calm down? Complete control. This is stuff you are always 100% in control of, such as the words that come out of your mouth and whether or not you're wearing pants. As I have stated, and will continue to drill into your skull like an old-timey lobotomist, Worrying is a waste of your precious time, energy, and money. And worrying about the things you can't control is the biggest waste of all. This is true of a low-level anxieties and high probability storms, from existential angst to all-out catastrophes. Whether they be problems with your friends or family, boss, co-workers, car, bank account, boyfriend, girlfriend, or tarantulas, the ones you have the power to solve, the worries you can discard, and the responses you can organise are the ones to focus on. The one question to rule them all in action: what if I tell my bestie Rachel what I really think of her new bangs and she never forgives me? Can I control it? Completely. Keep your trap shut and your friendship intact. Or, what if I accidentally shout another woman's name in bed with my new girlfriend? Can I control it? Yes, for God's sake, Randy, get hold of yourself. No wonder your new girlfriend doesn't trust you. How about, what if rumours of a union dispute come to pass and force the cancellation of the monster truck rally next Wednesday that I was all excited about? Can I control it? Unless you also happen to be the Monster Truckers Union president, unequivocally, no. Which means that this is a worry you should ideally discard. I'll move on to, okay, but how do I discard it in a few? Be patient. Or, what if something bad happens to people I give incorrect directions to? Can I control it? Yes, by telling the next nice young couple from Bismarck that you have a terrible sense of geography and they'd be better off querying a fire hydrant. This what if is supremely easy to snuff out in its inception. Take it from someone who thinks turning right automatically means going east. And sometimes you might have to break a big worry down into smaller components, some of which you can control and some of which you can't. What if I laugh so hard I pee my pants during my friend's stand-up gig? Can I control it? First of all, lucky you if your stand-up comedian friend is actually that funny. If you're prone to laugh leaks, you may not be able to control the bladder, but you can make a contribution to your overall preparedness. There are many options in the personal hygiene aisle that were invented expressly to assist you in dealing with this issue. This is so much fun. I think we should try a few more. This time on what ifs pulled directly from pulsating brains of Twitter followers. Stuff people in my Twitter feed are worried about. Can they control it? I'm happy and in a good relationship, but what if we wait too long to get married and never have kids? Can I control it? This is one you can heavily influence. You don't necessarily have full control over whether you get pregnant, but in terms of this specific what if, you can control, not waiting too long to start trying. You know how this whole aging eggs things work, and if you have to, you can explain it to Dan. However, if you have to explain it to Dan, maybe Dan should have paid more attention in 10th grade bio. What if I never find the escape hatch from my soul-sucking day job? Can you control it? Yes, you can. Yes, you can only never find what you stop looking for. I think it was Yoda who said that. Bit of an anti-guru himself, that guy. What if I'm failing as an adult? Can I control it? Yes. Adults do things like pay taxes, take responsibility for their actions, make their own dinner, and show up on time for prostate exams. Do these things and you will be succeeding as an adult. If your what if is more existential in nature, perhaps you should get a hobby. Adults have those too. What if I choose not to go home and visit my family this weekend and something bad happens to them and I regret it forever? Can I control it? Yes. If your goal is not to have to worry about this, go visit them. If what you're really asking for is permission not to drive 6 hours to DC in holiday weekend traffic, and you also don't want to worry about the consequences of that decision, bust out your trusty probometer. How likely is it that something bad is going to happen to your family this weekend of all weekends? It's a category 1, isn't it? You know what to do. What if my son doesn't have the developmental problems his doctor thinks he has and he's just a budding sociopath? Can I control it? Yikes. I'm sorry to say, you can't control whether the kid's a sociopath. You can't even heavily influence it if we're talking a DNA level storm, but you can contribute to the overall cause by continuing to seek help for him. And maybe a second opinion while you're at it. Seems prudent in this case. What if all my friends and family hate me and I don't know it? Can I control it? I refer you to your internal weather person to determine the probability of this scenario. Assemble all the data. If your friends are nice to you on a regular basis and don't avoid your calls or talk about you in group chats that they think you're not going to see, except they don't know that Sandra is always leaving her phone unlocked and sitting on the table when she goes to the toilet, then they probably don't hate you. If they do these things, I don't think they're keeping it much of a secret. I'm not sure I understand the question. What if I have an ugly baby? Can I control it? No. And besides, all babies are ugly. You're not going to get a real sense of how that thing turned out until much later in life. And even then, puberty does terrible things to a human. What if democracy is failing and my kids are in mortal danger because of that? Can I control it? Not really, but please vote or run for office. We all need you. What if I get laid off without warning? Can I control it? Being laid off, as in not fired, but rather let go without cause, and as you said, without warning? No. Come on, the answer was right there in the question. On the other hand, if you're asking what if you get fired without warning, well, I bet that if your boss plans on firing you, he or she has actually given you plenty of warning. You just weren't listening. What if my aging parents start to fall apart? Can I control it? Ultimately, no. You can encourage them to get checkups and fill prescriptions and maybe sign up for a light water aerobics class to stay limber. But you're not in control of anyone's health or related decision making. If they do go ahead and fall apart, you can worry about it then. What if I get bitten by a raccoon? Can I control it? Yes, but not by hanging out with raccoons. Who are you, Davy Crockett? Last but not least, a query that stood out to me for an oddly personal reason. What if my teeth fall out? Can I control it? You can heavily influence your teeth staying put by brushing regularly, swigging mouthwash, flossing, going to the dentist, wearing a Nike, and guys named Wonka. However, this particular tweet gave me pause, not because I'm consciously worried about the fate of my biker's pids, but because I happen to have a teeth falling out dream every few months. And when I looked it up in one of those dream interpretation books, I learned that loss or crumbling teeth in your dream indicates a feeling of powerlessness in real life. In other words, a loss of control. Apparently, my anxiety runs so deep, I'm what-ifing in my sleep. If the answer is no, this is how you let it go. What may come as a surprise to you after reading the previous section is that none of this should come as a surprise to you. Can you control it or aspects of it? Yes or no? You already have the answers. We've established that you cannot, for example, control being suddenly laid off. But if you're worried about this, I understand where you're coming from. Throughout my 20s, my ability to perform my job well was not in question. I was not in danger of getting fired for cause. Still, I worried passionately about losing my job due to cutbacks or other factors at the corporate level that I definitely could not control. I remember having these worries. I remember people telling me everything would be fine and that I couldn't control it anyway, so I should let it go and stop freaking out about it. And I remember thinking, easy for you to say, you jerk. Or, as one of my Twitter followers more politely articulated, how do I get from understanding that worry is pointless to actually not worrying? Excellent question. Once you've acknowledged the problem, you begin to let go of your worries about said problem by accepting the things you can't control, a skill that over 60% of my anonymous survey takers have yet to master, by the by. I hope that the same 60% are reading, because it's actually easier to do than they think. Reality check, please. Please note, I'm not using the word acceptance in the sense that you're supposed to suddenly become happy about whatever stuff has happened that you can't control. It's totally understandable, especially in the short term, to be very upset by stuff we can't control. As Ross was when Rachel broke up with him on Friends, using the very words, accept that. But if you've been dumped, duped, or messed over, facts are facts. Continuing to spend time, energy, and money in the long term, being anxious, sad, or angry about it, or avoiding it, is waste of freak-out funds. For the purposes of this book and execution of the no worries method, I'm using the word accept to mean understand the reality of the situation. That's not so hard, is it? If you can accept that the sky is blue and water is wet and macaroons are disappointing and borderline fraudulent as a dessert, you can accept the things you can't control. And when you answer the question to rule them all with a no, you have already accepted reality. You have admitted that you can't control something. So it's that simple. Hurrah, Sarah Knight, dropping common sense knowledge bombs since 2015. Right, we're going to stop there today, guys. Hope you enjoyed those next few chapters of the book. Have a great day. Enjoy that sunshine whilst it's here. And I will be back again tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So if you fancy hearing a bit more of the book, come and join me. If not, I'll see you all very soon. Take care.